Welcome back, Chappelle. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your flipped classroom, and welcome back to our continuing discussion of colonization, right? So we started talking about colonization. We focused our last flip quite a bit on Spanish colonization, right? Talking about the Spanish colonizing Central South America and stuff like that. We focused also a lot on the atrocities that were committed to the native populations there, including the Aztecs and the Incas and other communities like that. So we also talked a lot about different stuff as well, going into the colonization of North America in class. Started talking a lot about the French showing up in Canada, using that Mississippi River, going all the way down into Louisiana, and setting up a base of operations there that didn't grow very much, and their colonies grew very, very slowly. Now we moved into, in class, talking about the English colonies, right? So the big thing to understand, though, is that this flip is not going to be that long, and you have a 3-day weekend, which is going to be crazy. All right, so now, the thing about it, though, is we left off in class in B period, C period, F period, all the different classes we left off talking about the first attempts at English colonization, right? Talked about Roanoke a little bit, talked about how it was the lost colony and stuff like that, and we talked about a lot about the first permanent colony, which is Jamestown, Virginia, right? The settlers would not have survived without the help of the Native Americans. Talked a little bit about as well as like how Disney lied to you about Pocahontas and stuff like that. And the only other big thing about it is that we talked about the discovery of this lady, right, Jamestown Jane, and the cannibalism that actually may have happened in that colony due to this period of time known as the Starving Times, because the colonists couldn't handle the intense winters. And then also we talked about the discovery of tobacco, right, how that's going to make a lot of money for the Virginia Company and make an excessive amount of money for the English government, right? So the thing about it, though, is now we're moving into another colony, right? We're going to start focusing on some colonies that are a little bit north of Virginia, right? And we're going to start getting into the Massachusetts Bay Colony, right? Now, the thing about it is that you've heard of the Massachusetts Bay Colony before, right? Except you called it, when you were in school, Plymouth. And you talked about this goofy rock, right? You were like, oh, there's Plymouth Rock and stuff like that. Fun fact, did you know that thing's only about the size of like a basketball? It's only about that big. You know what I mean? Like Plymouth Rock is actually a very, very small thing. And it has the year 1620, when the people known as the Pilgrims showed up on the Mayflower and stuff like that. Now, the thing about it, though, when you were making hand turkeys and stuff like that when you were little, and you were talking about the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, and you were doing all these other little dinky things, you heard a lot of this different stuff about religious freedom. Oh, this colony was started for religious freedom and all this other stuff like that. Well, to keep in mind, who were they? Where were they coming from? What religion were they, right? Well, who they are is they're separatists, right? These people known as Puritan separatists. Now, anybody who's in advanced English and stuff like that, who's read The Crucible, this is their colony, right? Like, so the Massachusetts Bay Colony is going to have colonies like Salem, later settlements as well, but the Plymouth Colony is their first one. Now, Puritan separatists, aka the Pilgrims, showed up and would land in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. Now, who they are, these Puritan separatists, are English Protestants who were being persecuted in England. Now, it's very important that you highlight Puritan, keep them in the back of your mind, because we're going to be talking about them a lot next unit, right? The next unit we talk about Puritans a lot. We talk about all the kerfuffles that were caused with all the different stuff out in England. We're going to talk about the Stuarts that come up and how they didn't like them and stuff like that a little bit later on. And another little thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind is who these people are descendant of. Puritans are a type of Calvinist, right? And y'all know Calvinists. Calvinists are those ones that don't believe in games or decks of cards or doing anything fun or drinking or singing in public or theaters or whatever. And like literally, look how happy they are about it apparently. Well, the thing about it is though in general is they also only believe in wearing that black and white garb and stuff like that. Well, the thing about it though is that colony was not pitched to you in a way that's actually extremely historically accurate when you were young, right? Yes, they had Thanksgiving and like all that stuff. But actually, ironically enough, that was only to say thanks to the Native Americans who saved them from starving over several winters. And then also the Puritans would later on go to take their land and take the land of the Native Americans and take their resources and stuff like that and commit terrible things to them. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. But the thing about it, though, in general, the Puritan separatists, aka the Pilgrims, are going to start that first colony for religious freedom, quote unquote. They're going to actually get help from the Powhatan natives that live nearby there. And the English colonies, because after that colony is actually founded, are going to begin to spread and stretch. After the Plymouth Plymouth colony is successful in 1620, and after 1607, when the Jamestown colony is successful, they're going to start realizing, the English are going to start realizing that they can start setting up colonies all over the place, right? And they're going to set them up in New York. They're going to set them up in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and as the years progress, these colonies would expand very, very quickly, and they grew super, super fast, right? They were the original 13 colonies. Now, the thing about it is why did English colonies grow so much faster than French colonies, right? Well, a lot of it is related to who was going to colonize, right? Well, the thing about it is English settlers were entire families, right? A father, a mother, or people that met in the colony who then had families and lived there and permanently stayed there is going to be much more emblematic of the English colonies, right? Now, this is going to lead to an entire thing later on that they're going to have to deal with, which is the people that are born in these colonies are going to identify themselves more as Americans rather than English and help lead to that American Revolution. But the other big thing about it is it's going to help those colonies grow really, really rapidly, very, very quickly, because you're having an expansive amount of people being born there and things like that. Whereas the French were French journeymen, right? We talked about that in C period a lot, I know that. French journeymen that would come over here, hunt beaver or muskrat or other animals like that, fur trap, and then go back over to France. They had no intention of staying or settling or having families and things like that here, so their colonies grew extremely slowly. But those English colonies, on the other hand, grew very, very quickly. Now, what is this going to help lead to, though? You're going to start realizing that, wait a minute, if I understand maps and stuff like that, this could lead to a war, right? Yes, so we're going to have a bunch of struggles for power, right? So the thing that's going to end up going down, if you look at these like different elements and these different ideas in general, looking at this map right here, if you zoom in on this side, this is kind of what the colonies looked like after they began to grow into the 1700s, right? All the pink and stuff like that is the British colonies, all the yellow is the French, and all the like green is Spanish, right? Well, what always happens whenever you have areas like this, right? Areas where there are no defined borders, where there are no like, oh, this is mine, and then somebody shows up and says, oh, no, this is mine, and then the French guy shows up and he's like, oh, this is mine. Now, the thing about it, though, in general, is it's going to help lead to a lot of very large wars, right? Europeans would eventually begin to dispute over this land for future colonies, and wars like the French and Indian War would break out from 1754 to 1763, and would actually be the very first global conflicts over huge colonial holdings. Why was this all done? Mostly for money, right? It's to make more money, it's to make more money off these colonies, and to eventually try to expand them. And after the French and Indian War, look at all the land that would be claimed by the British, right? So like, because we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, because the French and Indian War, aka the 7 Years' War, is going to be a major lead up to the French Revolution. It's going to be a major lead up to Napoleon, and it's going to kind of rock the foundations, economically speaking, of Europe and help lead them into a massive set of wars, right? Now, the last little thing we got to talk about is one little simple concept that we're going to explain a little bit more in class, and I'm going to try and really, really demonstrate to you in general, okay? We got three other big themes to talk about, and then we're going to take your test. By the way, everybody, for your test, just you want to go ahead and write this down. B and C period, your test is going to be January 26th. F period, yours is going to be January 27th, okay? So make sure you jot that down. Now, the thing about it, though, in general, is we're going to be talking about the effects of global contact now, the effects of exploration. We're then going to begin to discuss, like, the triangular trade and also the intercoastal slave trade and things like that, and the disgusting atrocities that were committed there. And then we're going to begin to discuss what was going on in Europe during the 1500s, which is this thing known as the Scientific Revolution, okay? We're going to be playing around a lot with time right now. And do not get too confused, because I know my C period really likes to know like where things happen in time, and I know kids in my B period like to know the same things as well. And my F period kids, they're always just like trying to stay on top of it, making timelines and stuff like that, okay? So the thing about it, though, is if you have any questions about it, come in and see me. But the effects of global contact are going to be massive, okay? And this one right here might be one of the most important things we talk about all year, because it helps explain almost everything, right? It's this concept known as the Columbian Exchange, right? Now, the Columbian Exchange is huge. I need you to highlight it, circle it, star it, underline it, make it look like it's exploding, all that fun stuff, okay? What it is it's the simple exchange of goods from, like, the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere of the planet, right? So over here on the Western Hemisphere, we had North and South America, and they had all these things that the Europeans didn't know existed. Things like corn, turkeys, tomatoes, pumpkins, cocoa beans, peanuts, potatoes, all these different items, right? Well, what's going to happen when the Europeans show up in North and South America? They're going to discover these items, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, people back in Europe would really like this stuff. and they're going to bring it back, right? Begin trying to plant them. It's going to revolutionize economics, and it's going to increase trade products, right? Now, the Europeans, though, also had stuff that North Americans and Native Americans had never seen, like sugarcane, honeybees, grains, livestock, peaches, like citrus fruits, bananas, all this other stuff, and also the other big one, disease, right? That would be spread to the Western Hemisphere as well, right? So we have right here going on an informal exchange of goods and items that's going on, where now all items that are accessible on the planet will now be accessible all over the place, right? Rather than being locked in to certain areas or to certain continents, right? But we're going to talk about how this actually expanded all trade and how it's going to affect the rest of Western civilizations in total. When I see y'all again in class after your long weekend. Y'all enjoy yourselves. Have a great weekend. I'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good one.